Good evening. Welcome to the March 4th Titusville Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Would everybody stand for the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Lori.
Chairman Aton,
Here.
Vice Chairman Childs.
Here.
Secretary Faison.
Here.
Member Garrod.
Here.
Member Scully.
Here.
Member Gellin. Alternate Member Seidler. Alternate Member Troutman.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. Next item of business is approval of the minutes of February 18th. Does anyone have any comments or changes or a motion? Member Troutman.
I would make a motion to consider the minutes as written.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. City Attorney, quasi-judicial procedures, please.
Good evening. During the public hearing portion of the meeting, any person wishing to speak on a quasi-judicial item must first sign a public hearing agenda card and sign the oath contained thereon. These cards are located on the table at the front of the council chamber. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first, those opposed will be heard second, and those who wish to make a public comment on the item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. Witnesses may be cross-examined by the applicant, commission staff representatives, and such other representatives as authorized by the commission. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents for the Planning and Zoning Commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Please submit such exhibits to the city clerk. City clerk, have all persons wishing to speak before the Planning and Zoning Commission signed an oath card?
Yes.
Is there anyone else present who has not signed an oath card who wishes to speak on a quasi-judicial item? If so, please submit a card at this time. Have all agenda items been properly advertised?
Yes.
In the event that a member has received ex parte communication, verbal or written, the identity of the person with whom communication took place and the substance of the communication must be disclosed, including opinions and facts discussed. Any written communication must be made part of the record. Have any of the members visited any sites or spoken to any members of the public regarding an item to be reviewed?
I did, Mr. Oliver representing item 9B. He's done some work before for me, so he had my phone number. Just wanted to notify me that he was not going to make it, but a member of his staff was going to rush here and try to represent item 9B.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we have our first of two petitions and requests from the public present.
My name is Stan Johnson. As you know, I'm a professional engineer. I've been here for over 50 years. And I've come to show you an interesting problem that we have. This is the stormwater management plan of the city of Titusville. And interestingly is that a number of engineers who have been in charge of this didn't even see it. That's hard for you to be responsible for something that your engineers do not even look at, that community development doesn't look at. So what I did, I sent you an email, and that little handout, that's part of a page in here. Let me open the page to you. You have an attachment to the email that I sent you that's 11 by 17, please see. So that's part of it right there. That's showing 16 sections, typical sections of ditches, the widest one being 170 feet, and the most narrow being 70 feet. This was to be implemented in 1966. That's about 60 years ago. So why hasn't it been implemented? So don't beat yourself to death, because it has a history that is embarrassing, that nobody looks at it, and there's many violations to city code and many violations to budgeting and other things. So this has, I'm not saying whether this is traditional or not, but traditionally the city has ignored this document that cost them big money, big time. And there's many errors now in what the city is doing because they are ignoring it. So this email that I sent you enumerates some of the problems that the city has because the city has ignored this for years and continues to ignore it, even in our sustainability report. So I don't have much time, so instead of reading you the title, I'll read you what it says here is that city consultants, DRMP, Geosyntec, East Central Florida Regional Planning Council, and others, including the city of Titusville, have ignored these laws, and they've covered up negligence and dishonesty. And it has to do with failure to satisfy FEMA requirements, FDOT requirements, engineering drainage law, the fact that water flows downhill, implementation of budgeting, false and fraudulent sustainability reports, failure to maintain public improvements. Then I go on a little bit more. I got just a few seconds left, but including we have dams. We have dams, and the dams were shown. Can I have another 30 seconds? Nobody wants to.
Anyone care?
Just 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds.
Okay.
A second.
All right, 30 seconds.
30
Here goes. Is that what's going on is that the city is not implementing these, and it's illegal what the city is doing, and it's bad. It's really bad. And what I mentioned on the about dams is that the dams were approved without even having a survey of the dams to show what they flood. They were approved without that. And they were approved without approval from FEMA, and approval without survey of the wetlands and pre and post development wetlands. So it's highly illegal what the city is doing. So I'm here to answer any questions about what's going on.
Thank you.
No questions. Okay, good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a question. Not for Stan. In regards to this, Eddie, I know that Stan comes up here and brings a lot of information to us. This was something that I was kind of curious about. I did get the email from Stan. I believe all of us got that email. I guess the canals that we have in the city, like, I assume the city manager keeps track of that and how and when those get taken care of or anything like that. Is any of that information public or can be provided public, or is that something that we can ask city council to look into on these canals to get some information, some light into this, I guess?
So the city canals would be maintained by the Public Works Department. I believe Stan has emailed them as well with his concerns, and so they're aware of his concerns. I'm not sure if there's any additional information that needs to be brought forward at this point.
Yeah, just curious if, transparency is being taken care of and they're getting information out to that we're, either we're taking care of this or we're not, or we got process improvements in place to start mitigating this. I don't know. I don't know where we're at with that stuff, so.
Any other petitions and requests? Seeing none, we have no old business. First order of business is item 9A.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners. Item 9A is rezoning number 8, 2025 at 317 Oleander Place. And this item begins on page 10 of 89 of tonight's packet. The applicant is requesting a rezoning for property located at 317 Oleander Place from the Indian River City Neighborhood Commercial, IRC&C zoning district, to the Indian River City Neighborhood Residential, IRC&R zoning district, in order to construct a single-family residence. The current Indian River City Neighborhood Commercial zoning on the property was adopted by Ordinance Number 2, 2014, which established the Indian River City Neighborhood Zoning District for the area, generally bounded by Olmsted Drive to the north, Cheney Highway, State Road 50 to the south, the FEC Railroad to the west, and the Indian River shoreline to the east. This zoning district was created following the adoption of the Indian River City Neighborhood Plan. The plan began in 2005 by residents concerned with the long-term stability of their neighborhood. The main objective of the plan is to provide housing opportunities for residents with a range of incomes and promote homeownership and protect the residential character of the neighborhood from non-residential encroachment and non-conforming uses, while providing redevelopment and revitalization opportunities for the commercial corridors. In reviewing the request, it is important to consider the likelihood that the property could be utilized in its current zoning district as part of a larger commercial redevelopment along the South Hopkins Avenue corridor in the future. Prior to the adoption of the neighborhood plan, the property was zoned community commercial, CC, and had a future land use designation of commercial high intensity. The adjacent property to the west at 4007 South Hopkins Avenue has a single-family residence, which is not a permitted use in the CC zoning district. At the time, it would have been a non-conforming use. The Indian River City Neighborhood Commercial Zoning District permits existing single-family residences to remain as a permitted use. Therefore, the subject property is separated from the commercial corridor along South Hopkins Avenue by an existing home. If you'll turn to page 17 of the agenda packet has a map at the top of the page, which is an excerpt from page 25 of the Indian River City Neighborhood Plan. It's the core residential area map. And the area that's outlined, there's a green hash and a red outline, is the core residential area for single family. You'll notice the subject property is towards the center left, is abutting, but just outside of that core residential area. If you'll turn to page 18, Future Land Use Element Policy 1.13.1 states, the City of Titusville shall provide for the preservation and revitalization of the established residential and commercial neighborhoods of the US 1 Corridor Study Area as identified in the US 1 Corridor Master Plan adopted in 2006. The staff comment reads, the US 1 Corridor Master Plan Concept Plan, US 1 Corridor Master Plan Concept Plan identifies the subject property and the surrounding area as single-family residential and emphasizes neighborhood preservation for the area between Olmsted Drive and State Road 50. The Character Districts map within the master plan identifies the subject property as within the Residential Preservation District. The request to rezone from the IRCN-C zoning district to the IRCN-R zoning district is consistent with the US 1 Corridor Master Plan. The findings are summarized at the end of the report on beginning on page 23. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Member Child.
So you're trying to point out that the plan for that area is that the future use is that there's commercial along there, that all of it kind of converts to commercial. Is that kind of what you're saying in the plan there?
There are two different plans in place. There's the US 1 Corridor Master Plan, which identifies that the subject property should be residential in nature.
Yeah.
And then there's also the Indian River City Neighborhood Plan, which identified this property as outside the core residential area, although it is just outside of it, it's abutting it. And so the property has remained vacant for a number of years in the commercial, Indian River City Neighborhood Commercial, and the applicant is proposing to change that to residential in order to construct a single-family residence.
Okay, got it.
Member Garad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spoke to Eddie earlier this week in a call, and I have a few more questions to follow up that. But I also want to ask specifically some of the background information is very illustrative to me as to what this request is really all about. Looking at page 17, as Eddie pointed out, and P25's the core residential area map, I'm going to offer some supposition. The report later from staff indicates this lot has remained vacant. It still is vacant. It's remained undeveloped. It transitioned because of comprehensive plan designations, more particularly the core residential area map, where, with good reason, because the adjacent home site developed with a house is on Hopkins Avenue. From a planning perspective, somebody would have, I suppose, said, well, using the bistro that's located on Hopkins just south of there, I think it's called the Cold Spot, as a house turned into a cold spot, the next lot developed with the cold spot, and it's migrating just exactly like this plan would suppose it should happen. My supposition, since I didn't write the plan, was the idea was the home would buy the lot eventually and kind of follow the suit led that I just explained, how the cold spot grew like this does commercial on Hopkins into a residential area. This, however, as the staff report points out, didn't do that. It's remained as it was, as it has been in perpetuity. The applicant comes forward and is trying to adjust that to what they want to do, build a house. Staff's report suggests, or certainly documents, that there isn't much likelihood of the scenario commercial goes east towards that Highway 1 plan, commercially speaking, because the home's been improved. It's a nice-looking homestead. I always go by it and shake my head. I wish my house looked that good. And it's not probably going to go commercial. Somebody's made a very nice homestead and intends to stay there. So plans don't always work like planned. And I think that's what the summary suggests in the end, while the support is there, that the plan didn't work, and now, because of that, we should let somebody go forward. That's my take on how much importance there is to page 1789 of what that map's trying to illustrate and how the dynamics work or didn't work. And if you look at the line along Hopkins, it goes back and forth as it dives in and out of homesteads or houses that convert, like the example I gave of the cold spot. The question that I had for Eddie on the phone, and hopefully legal counsel is going to be here to help us with this, is in the report on page 19, I think it is, during the summary of support in the analysis about building coverage, lot width, and density, lot area, lot width, and density, and coverage, they're all development standards. And then in the report, it speaks about that the nonconformity, and the nonconformity in this instance is not caused by an effect of some homeowner. It didn't sell off some of the property to build another house and leave themselves painted in the corner, so to speak. It's not a case where you created a subdivision of inconsistently sized lots, so that would violate the district rules. So you don't really create a problem for yourself and ask for relief. In this instance, it's what I'm used to familiarly calling a lot of record. It existed in ownership before the rule came to it. The rule in this case set a standard that said you have to be this wide, this large, this long, this setback, this height, and et cetera. To which, in everything but I believe the density issue, you have this relief through section 34-347. I thought maybe perhaps you could explain what 34-347 does in reference to the specifics on lot area, lot width, and I'm sorry, I've got the cursor in the wrong place. Section 28-330, lot area minimum, lot width minimum, and building coverage minimum, which isn't apparently an issue. The ones that are substantive that appear on face value are lot area and lot width. And that's section 344. How does that help the applicant?
Excuse me. Sure. So what Member Garrard is speaking to is the development standards for the proposed zoning district and how the lot would not meet those development standards. There are remedies in the code for lots that don't meet the dimensional standards. And one of those remedies would be if the property owner owns the adjacent lot that is also a substandard, they would be required to combine those lots to make a lot that meets those standards, such as lot width. Then those two lots combined would meet the minimum lot width. In this case, the property owner doesn't have that. That's not this scenario. But what Member Garrard is talking to specifically, because those remedies in section 34-347 speak to the lot area and lot width. They don't speak to density. And so what we've added in our staff report is that a variance would be required to the density because it is an additional standard that's laid out in the zoning district that is separate from the specifically outlined lot area. Now, as Member Garad mentioned, density, when you look at it, at a lot level, is very similar to, is regulating the same thing as a lot area. You're looking at it at how many square feet does the lot have, and can it support one unit? And so are we regulating the same thing twice? And is there a remedy that already exists in the code? If there's a remedy for lot area, does it also need a variance to density? And so that was the question that the Member Garad is bringing up.
So as I was mentioning, when you don't create the deficiency, you plan a subdivision or you sold lots away from your ownership and created the substandard measure, therein is why you would either say I need a variance or you don't get a development order because you didn't conform, you caused your own problem. Simple as that is my opinion. In this instance, what happens is the ownership is existing in single terms. It's only that property, and there's a regulatory relief built into the code for that, referred to in my experience as a non-conforming lot of record or a lot of record, which in the case of vacant land, however, you've got to build to the development standards that exist when you ask for the zoning and being granted the zoning. Now you have to meet that standard. Setback, height, lot coverage, those are standards that are kind of fitting the hand in the glove.
I had questions related to that.
To that extent, the call, and my opinion, is density to me is more regulatory to land use regulations than zoning. Because if you take those extrapolated data criteria like lot width, lot depth, lot area, it extrapolates to density. It's pretty simple to think about that. In the case of the comprehensive plan, it's the glove the hand fits into. Zoning's the hand. The glove says we want this finger to be this long and that finger to be this wide, density from the two fingers. If you plan a subdivision, you have to plot out those lots in that density configuration, then fine tune them down to lot width and lot area. And you see that every time you see a subdivision proposal. And that being said, I ask the question, then why isn't density as a zoning matter as grandfathered protected as the other two zoning standards are? Because it's merely a zoning standard. It's not exceeding the density of the comprehensive plan. If you were to regulate it on a lot-by-lot basis, I would dare say you'd have an awful lot of created nonconformity in Titusville based on a density of a gross land area applied to lots which were in their time platted to be the right width and the right depth and the right area, but any one of those net lots might cause an exceedance of density because the density was in compliance, because over here's the park, over here's the retention pond, over here are the road rights of way. So from the blanket area, you meet density with your proposal, but any one lot might not meet that density. And so taking that to this point, my question was, why would you have to go to the Board of Adjustment to ask the question of that board, can I get a variance from density, when you've already stepped through this body for recommendation, the city council, presumably if they approved it, and now you take that process and you revert it back to the Board of Adjustment and they say, no, I don't think so, it doesn't sound like a hardship to me. And I'm not projecting that, I'm just saying, what a ride you take for no good reason. And you're not done until the Board of Adjustment decides. This, to me, is a zoning matter. A zoning matter is related to this body and the city council, not the Board of Adjustment. And the zoning matter before us is accepting a request to approve a zoning supported by staff by the analysis, with one exception, that it won't meet the criteria of lot density, wherein I think, my opinion, lot density as a zoning matter in this case is just like the maximum coverage, vacant land. It's just like lot width. It existed before the zoning. It's just like area of zoning. It existed before the zoning. The zoning only comes when it's approved. So my question, I hope that makes sense to everybody. I was trying to explain it to why I asked the question. So council, may I ask you what you think of my opinion?
So, I mean, I agree with the intent and the analysis. The issue is even if we all agree on that, we're still bound by the plain text in the code where there is a 10,000 square foot lot area minimum. This, to me, would be a classic hardship and is the entire reason that the variance process exists, especially more so than self-created hardships. I mean, the lot of record issue is definitionally a hardship that variance should be applied to. So, I mean, I'm in agreement with your interpretation, but I just am not sure how it overrides the text that we have in this zoning district. This body,
Does council have the power to grant variances without the
Not you.
no,
board?
that stays with Board of Adjustment and Appeals.
And if I may follow up that, the reason I'm going this length is because if my opinion isn't the opinion prevailing, I think my opinion warrants exploration because my opinion's based on this knowledge. Whether this was a date and time that the city of Titusville said, today hereby grant the city of Titusville subdivisions R1000 zoning. We're going to rezone the whole city. Everywhere in the city is going to be R1000 zoning, and your minimum lot width has to be 100 feet, using that example. Somebody out there is not going to be conforming, and they're going to live in their homestead. And then what the government would do eventually is force compliance with that new standard by denying any development order that made you improve your property exceeding some determining factor like 50%, or if your building burnt down, you would deem it non-redevelopment because you lost your conformity due to an act of God in this case. When you have vacant property and you cast upon the city the R1000 zoning that says you'll be 100 feet wide, however, you existed in your single ownership before you cast the rule to me, what my experience teaches me is that becomes a lot of record. As same as the day you created zoning in whatever year the city of Titusville adopted comprehensive zoning, I presume it was in the 60s. And after there, you had to conform, you had to subdivide land to the development standards that are in the text of the book. All that's fine. That's what we do. We evaluate plans to see if they meet the zoning. We respect the staff's report. They say, we recommend you approve it because it meets all the standards, as an example. But for nonconformity that existed before a rule, in most instances, you are protected. You didn't ask that to be there. And even if you did ask it, you didn't ask for that minimum to be there. It's the one you were given to, one assigned to you, purely speaking. The city council grants it. You may have asked for it, but the granting is a pure subject. They did it. It happened. And at that point, that creates a time frame. From that point on, you can't make your lot smaller. You can't further subdivide it out of compliance with the code. But if you existed in single ownership with no other ownership in history under your common ownership, by creating that zoning to the property, you become protected by the nonconformity. Because in my opinion, it just doesn't do a lot of sensible good in this instance to send a party through this process, to have to go and ask dad if it's okay, after you asked mom and the aunt and grandma, and you got all the way through all the family, but you got to get dad's permission. And in this case, dad's permission is on a hardship issue, and our regulatory review is on a zoning matter, development standard matter, to which I have the opinion, and I understand council's advice, and why I'm spending the time is to say, if these rules aren't there already, if these rules exist to force a person to go through these subordinate processes, I don't think that's the right direction. I think it ought to be a cleaner slate. It ought to say, if you are a lot of record and you ask for a zoning that you're substandard to, as long as you can meet height and setback and those other functional requirements you have to meet because it's new development, the ownership is the issue, not the development per se. You can't create a nonconformity by saying my lot's too small, so my house I have to build will have to be 5 feet away instead of 10, the code. And that's what hardships are for. Someone would argue, well, make the house smaller and meet the code. And I go, well, I like big houses. That's what hardships are about. Is that a hardship or not? That's what the Board of Adjustment's embodied to do, empowered to do. In this instance, it's more pure. It's vacant land. It's never been in ownership of any other property. It's remained vacant land. The area map had a glitch in it maybe a glitch, maybe a presumption, a supposition was, I think that guy will buy him out eventually. It hasn't happened. Staff has a very good analysis about the Indian River City plan and all the specifics of that. To me, everything's ripened for this makes sense, but this one exception that after it's all over, go get a variance from density. And that part, I don't understand. Lot area, lot width, I get as grandfathered in without exception, but density, to me, that's just not relevant to this case because you have lot area. And the lot area is grandfathered in. Density's not, in my opinion, my practicing opinion, density's more favored by comprehensive land use designations for future development, not to overlay existing development and try to take that and mold it into something that is kind of vague. Density to one lot is never going to exceed the maximum density of an area. I mentioned to Eddie that if you accumulated Indian River City, wipe the slate clean from, well, I don't know where it goes north to Olmsted. If you were to go from Olmsted to 50, from Hopkins to US 1, clean it off and come back, I guarantee you'd have more houses than exist there now. And I equally guarantee you in any one lot, you don't meet the density of that designation. There's examples of that, I'm absolutely sure. Without going and nitpicking the spots, I could assure you, because we have one right here. It doesn't meet the density. It existed before the rules adopted. It gets protected in 2 of 3 categories. In one category, it's not, and that's where my opinion lies. So I could be wrong, but what my father say, the general say, I may be wrong, but I'm never, I may not be right, but I'm never wrong. So that's my 2 bits on it for consideration.
Member Troutman.
Yeah, so I was curious about that as well. If the applicant was going to have to go for a variant after this process, because I noticed the same thing. I was like, wait a minute, we already have an issue coming before us that they're going to have to go down another route and get another permission slip, so to speak. One thing that I did notice in some of these maps and all this is the residential in this area becomes, it was all highlighted as high-density residential on the map there. Let me see if I can pull up the map here and I can show you where it's highlighted. But so it's like, even if this was, we look at it and we say, if we agree to go, not commercial, but the rezoning for the, to do the house, that it would go to the high-density residential under that one?
I don't believe that's correct. Where did you see that?
I'm trying to find the map here where it had like the lines highlighted, which map it was.
Are you speaking to the zoning or the future land use?
The zoning. So right now, the future land use that they're requesting is for the residential. And I'm trying to find the map that shows where it was.
So this request is strictly a rezoning, so the future land use is not proposed to change. The zoning map is shown on page 33, and the surrounding zoning districts are Indian River City Neighborhood Commercial and Indian River City Neighborhood Residential.
Yeah, I think on page 15, it shows the Indian River existing zoning map, and I was trying to find that map. You said it was down in 30?
On page 15,
Yeah, there's like a cutout of that area.
that map is straight, it's an excerpt from the Indian River City Neighborhood Plan, which is included as an attachment to this agenda item. That is what the existing, or what the future land use was on the properties in this area prior to adoption of the US 1 future land use and the Indian River City Neighborhood Zoning District. So prior to 2014.
Okay, so under the residential, the IRCN residential, what, I guess if it were to be approved as to go residential, that would still have you could go low density, medium density, high density?
No,
Like
sir.
how we normally do it, other residential? No?
No.
So what density level would get that if we were to vote on that?
Is your question, what is the maximum density in the Indian River City neighborhood residential zoning district that's being requested?
No, I guess I can't find that drawing now, but what I was looking at before, it showed a high density. I guess it might have been previous what it was before. So between the commercial and the residential, it's just those two nomenclatures. It doesn't state, so like say Barna, there's low, single family low density, there's, single family medium density, there's single family high density. There's those different density levels.
Those are the different future land use districts in the city, but those are not located in this area within the Indian River City neighborhood plan.
Okay.
Those future land use designations are not found within this area once the US 1 corridor master plan was adopted. Those were
Okay.
replaced.
So this particular lot, if we're to go to residential, then I guess it would be a density question then it's saying minimum 10,000, right?
The US 1 corridor, the US 1 future land use that's on the property currently is not proposed to change, and there's no density tied to that future land use today. The zoning on the property, the requested IRCNR has a maximum density of 4 dwelling units per acre.
Okay, I guess that's what I was trying to figure out is they could put up to 4 dwellings per acre, but this isn't an acre, so it would just be the certain lot size then that
That's
Mr.
the point.
Gerard's talking about.
Correct.
Okay.
They're allowed, the maximum density in the zoning district is 4 units per acre. And if you divide the 4 units by the 43,560, the number of square feet in an acre, it's a little more than 10,000 square feet. And this lot is approximately 7,500 or 800 square feet. So it's below the number for 1 unit,
Okay.
which is
So it might-
Member Garod's point.
Then my question then would be is this something that we would ask city council or that we could change certain laws that allow us for certain situations like this to say, okay, well, we would approve this with this nature to where city council or I don't know how our laws would work to allow us to address a situation like this. If we got to present that to city council, they approve and whatever verbiage y'all come up with to say that that helps us in these situations like this, or is it, no, this is this, all right, you're going to have to go down all this line. These citizens are going to have to go down all these lines to make this happen.
One additional, if you wanted to do that outside of this application, the commission could make a recommendation to council to consider adding density to one of the non-conforming, one of the remedies in the non-conforming section, so that in the future, if this were to come forward, the density standard that's in the zoning district, since, as Member Garad mentioned, in some other codes, density is usually listed in the future land use designation, whereas here in Titusville, we have it listed in our future land use designation and in our zoning district. They're usually different levels. The future land use usually allows greater density, and the zoning district further limits it to, is more restrictive on the density.
Yeah, I'd be open for anything that we can process and prove where we see issues that, I'd like to throw
Yeah, and
out.
I'm hoping that, but I want to point out, to answer what you're saying and make it a simple rather than the long term as I do, I apologize. Just look at the statement on page 19 of 89, section 28.330. Minimum lot area is 10,000 square feet. You can read through that, but that's the minimum zoning lot area. And the lot width is 85 feet. So if you come in with a development, you propose a subdivision, vacant land into little lots or big lots, doesn't matter lots. Those lots have to be 85 feet in that zoning district and 10,000 square feet. That's correct. I want you to scroll down to density. Oops, density is 10,890 square feet. Your subdivision can't have 85-foot lots that are 10,000 square feet. You'll have to do it differently. But you told me the standard was 85, 10,000. No, when I'm a developer, and you hear this every presentation, vacant land, 100 acres, I'm going to be losing roads and retention and et cetera. My net density, however, will be 4 units an acre. And my lots will be 85 feet by 10,890 square feet in area. 10,000 square feet in area. And staff will recommend approval because those lots aren't relevant to density. Density was the big picture. Density is the comprehensive plan. Density doesn't belong in a code that also requires lot area. They're in conflict, built-in conflict. Now, I will admit, that'd be the first hardship I'd throw up in front of the Board of Adjustment and say, you got no choice. You
Okay.
created the rule and you created the hardship. My point is, I think the density of this zoning district is got the same grandfather provision as lot width and lot area, because it's not a development. I'm not proposing anything new. It exists. It's protected by its vested right. But to view the density as one standard alone, that you could alternatively recommend denial. If I was a purist, I would say, I don't want to violate the comprehensive plan's density of 4 units an acre. I can only recommend denial. And that's not the right way, and that's not what I would be doing, but that's the way it plays.
And just to be clear, the density is not listed in the comprehensive plan,
Only in the zoning district.
only in the zoning district in this designation. The US1 future land use designation does not have a density.
Other areas have density
Other future land use
designations.
designations do have a density.
Then there's a twofold problem, I would suppose to say, both with the way that they approach the comprehensive plan study area and the way that they have provided for an inherent conflict between lot area standards and density standards.
All right. In the interest of moving this along, I think we've heard from council that this is not something, as much as I think we all would like to ease the process for the applicant, it's not in the cards for this particular item. But we can make the recommendation to staff to bring this back, or to have council consider streamlining the process so somebody else doesn't get caught in this conundrum, or whatever you want to call it. So with that, any other questions before I open the public hearing? All right, I'll open the public hearing. Do we have any cards, Lori?
Yes. Norman White.
Hello, good evening. My name is Norman White, and thanks for all that super wealth of information. I actually bought this lot, probably should have done my homework. I actually do build houses for a living, so I probably should have done to do my homework. I'd assumed it was a platted lot that was grandfathered. I seen it was platted back early years ago, way back before the 70s, and I just know the county rules, but if they've been platted before 1972, they're grandfathered in. They don't like to use that word grandfather, but you can't take the value but then I found out it's not buildable. But even, I'm not familiar with the Titusville rules. I don't want to sound like a know-it-all, but I know Scottsmore, they're building on 0.15 acre lots with septic tanks every day. People are raising cane, but they were platted before 1972, and there's really nothing they can do. They're even putting septic tanks and wells on them on, 0.15 acre lots. So I really don't know, but at one time they come up with density, then they beat that, then they're starting to put them on little tiny lots. But I just assumed, there's residential all around it. I didn't know there was some kind of future. I don't know how you can take people's property and turn it in. I even figured, and maybe I'm wrong, but I figured even though if it was originally platted as a residential lot, if someone didn't change it, it would be buildable. I just assumed houses all around it that, it was built. I don't know the city rules, and I'm totally unprepared. I would like to, hopefully, get this next meeting, I want to get a little more prepared. I know the county rules. I know the county, May of 1975, if it's platted, I don't care if it's zoned for a 5 acre lot, you can build on a 50-foot wide lot, because it can be GU. So, I don't know no city rules. I know they got their own zoning rules, and I'm seeing that now. So I don't, anyways, I bought the lot. I told my son, my stepson, that if he saved up enough money to get a lot, that I would help him build a house. And that's what we do for a living, is build homes and stuff like this. So this would be his first project to get build a home. And it was a affordable lot. You don't find a lot nowhere for $20,000. It ain't no super expensive area, but we thought we'd build a small affordable house that we could build for like $250. If someone have a new first starter home, and even told him he could take it, but we don't know what we're going to do. I don't want to sit here and say we're building it for him and file some kind of hardship and then end up selling it. So I don't want to say the truth, but we thought about maybe keeping it for himself, but we don't know that. I don't want to say that and it not happen. But regardless of that, I don't know if I do want to be able to have a chance to study the platted, was it platted before a certain year? And then, if you take a lot that's buildable today, they can say that now on these lots are not buildable when you replat them, but to take the value out of the lot, if it was a buildable lot, I don't know. I know that's the way it is in the county, but I don't know the city rules. You seem very, very up on it. Rather you can or can't. I don't know, what I'm trying to say. So I need to research like I do. I know the county rules very well, so I mean, I don't know if this pertains to that or was it a residential lot at one time? I mean, and he was saying something about that. I heard just don't want to do commercial there, but these people are not going to knock their houses down, I don't think. I mean, there's lots of people that are going to, there's houses beside it across the street. I mean, and it's not dead on Hopkins by no means. It would have to take a big developer to come in here and want to knock them all down and, and there's streets to streets. I mean, I can understand if there was a big block of woods in there, 20 acres, they could put a mall or a grocery store, 10 acres. I mean, these are streets. So I just ask any, consideration, to give us a project. I
Yeah,
mean,
so just so you know, that you're stuck in a little bit of a issue here, but assuming we approve this tonight, goes to council, you do that, then you're gonna have to go for the Board of Adjustments and Appeals to get a variance on the density, and then you work with the staff to get a building permit for this, within the setbacks of the plan, for this zoning district and for a single-family home on this lot. And so a couple extra steps there, unfortunately, but, it's
that's
the
totally
rules.
okay. We'll do it. We'll try our best. That's all I can ask. Like I said, I turned in a building permit and everything. I just assumed it was platted. I don't remember what was platted, but it was years. I thought, it's old enough. I was kind of going by the county rules, but I was dummy me not to go try to, look into the city stuff.
It happens. Anyone have any questions for the applicant? Seeing none. Any other cards, Lori? Thank you.
Thank
Yes. Lawrence Graham.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lawrence Graham, 2161 Christine Drive. First of all, I didn't realize he bought it, but he's a great guy, by the way. I almost feel bad that I gotta maybe talk about it a little bit differently. I'm looking at this from a couple angles. Number one, I was on that IRC redevelopment committee. Matter of fact, there's my whole file that I saved from back then. And as you guys have seen the colored maps, that was designed, or the whole program was put together, namely for about 2 or 3 reasons. One of those was to shore up the commercial corridor because there was stuff being bought up and trying to be turned into multifamily or other items. And they were trying to find a way to maintain the integrity of all the residential lots in the area. And if you look at this map, you'll see the irregularities. That's because they had a bunch of commercial that was residential that become commercial, and they had to work around it. I'm also the owner of Orange Plumbing that is on 4295 South Hopkins. You'll see it's around my building as well, okay? Even that being said, there's a big vacant lot right next to me that was a residential house. They tore it down, and I thought about I would buy it and then see if they can make that commercial. It's like, no, that's not in the cards. That's not the way it was designed. So we have a situation here where they have an old beat-up residential structure that was on there. It's non-salvageable because I looked at it. And, for them to have to redevelop it, they have to take it out of commercial and move it to residential. If you look at one of the major things that we had brought up for the commercial side, it says purpose and intent of commercial mixed-use subdistrict. It is intended that the positive design elements of both commercial and residential development be protective and enhanced, and where appropriate, mixed residential and commercial structures be developed. It is intended to encourage the expansion of commercial uses where stormwater requirements, buffering 2 residential areas, and aesthetics can be improved. It is further intended for the district be in accord and promote the purposes set forth in the comprehensive plan. So that's one of the many items under the commercial to maintain it. And somebody brought up the neighboring property. The neighboring property is the Cold Spot. Well, that's where I've got another thing. I'm one of the owners of the building of the Cold Spot. If you change this back to residential, now we got 50-foot buffers that come in place for not only seating, but parking. And you're changing what
Want to
would
make a motion
normally,
for extra time? Yeah, I'm sorry.
it would encroach on that.
I'll make a motion for extra time. How
How much more do you
more
need?
do you need?
Oh, I'm almost done. I'm just pointing out what
About another
the
minute.
reason for this whole IRC Development Committee was for. It was for maintaining that of the commercial corridor, because at the time, the county and the city, there was some thought that there would be some facade grants and stuff to enhance that corridor, for one. And number two was the splitting up of those beautiful residential lots that are in the middle there. Some of them, what was happening, it was people were passing on and they were getting subdivided, and then your densities would increase, and they were trying to stop that or slow that from continuing to happen. But it's just my opinion that a lot of heartache went into creating this. I think we went in about 9 months, 10 months to create this plan. And you get it shored up, and then if we can change it from commercial to residential, well, then it's going to leave an opening for somebody like me that's going to go after to some residential that's right next to my commercial property.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I have a question. I have a question for you, sir. You were saying that there's a house on there, but it looks like it's a vacant lot. Are we talking about the same property or?
Same property. Same property. It's irregular. It's a real tiny house. It's just.
There's a
it's
tiny
beat up
house
from
on
the
it?
floor up, yeah.
I don't know. I was looking at some of the satellite stuff and it
That's
didn't
not
look
no
like
house
there
on
was.
Mr. Chairman?
If you're going to speak, you have
It's
to
the
come to the
adjacent
podium.
lot.
Member Garage.
But he bought both of them,
I
correct?
think perhaps.
If you're going to speak, you have to come to the
Yeah,
podium.
okay.
Okay, sorry. I was told that it was the house right next to the Cold Spot that has an irregular lot. Like, it's just a regular, it's almost like a small L shape.
So it's not so we're not talking about the same
We're
property.
not talking about the same.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, to clarify for the citizen, the purpose I mentioned the Cold Spot was from the perspective of the map we were examining, which shows this undulating line where properties are along Hopkins and on residential streets like the Cold Spot, and the land use went east to allow it to expand. This property's not near the Cold Spot. It's two streets away.
Okay, that's
It's on
good.
Olmsted.
When you'd said it was right next,
Yeah,
I thought you were talking
realized
to
my
that particular
discussion
property.
for trying to explain my opinion confused everybody. I apologize. The Cold Spot was just a reference to how land use planning works to change things. As you
Gotcha.
pointed out, it changes, and Cold Spot is a nice-looking business.
Yeah, and again, thanks for your time. I'm sorry for that misdirection. Obviously, that 50-foot setback for
Yeah.
the Cold Spot wouldn't apply.
My bad for bringing that example
No,
up.
you're good. Thank you.
Any other cards, Lori?
Yes, Don Mount.
Don Mount, 605 South Palm Avenue. And I was under a little bit of confusion. I was looking at 317 Dell Spine, which is connected to the Cold Spot. And changing that from commercial to residential would have a negative impact on the commercial property. So, but the bottom line is Cold Spot has, just for your edification, I guess, Cold Spot has been operating over 40 years as a bar. It was a house originally, and then for 40 years, it's been operating as a business. And that's really all I think I need to say, unless there's any questions.
That's fine. Thank you. Anything else, Lori?
No more cards.
Okay. Bring it back and close the public hearing. Any members have any questions for staff or a motion? Member Garad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To be brief, I would like to make a recommendation to approve the applicant's request as outlined in the staff report, as it's consistent with the comprehensive plan and believe consistent with the nature of the undeveloped property
I would also add that at some point, I would like to create at least advisement to city council that this density issue and the juxtaposition between density and lot area should be addressed so that that doesn't create this problem that's protected in two ways, not in the other one way. Thank you.
Chairman, could I make a suggestion that that be a separate motion just to be clean for the applicant for
Sure.
the minutes? Thank you.
I'll cut the
Well,
back half
I,
off.
I don't even know that has to be a motion. I think it's just our recommendation to staff. We've done it before that way, so.
I'll second the first part of that, the motion
The
part.
abbreviated version, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion before a vote? Seeing no lights, roll call, please, Lori.
Member Garad,
Yes?
Member Scully,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Childs,
Yes.
Member Troutman,
Yes.
Secretary Faison,
Yes.
Chairman Aton.
Yes. Congratulations. You're on, you passed the first step in your journey.
And this will be heard by City Council on March 24th.
Right.
And then I guess I would make the motion that, or do we need to make a
I don't
motion?
think we need a
No,
motion. Do we
just
need a motion
Direct
then,
staff
or no?
to,
If the commission's going to make a recommendation to City Council to consider changing the non-conforming standards to add density, I would suggest making that a.
Okay.
I would make that motion to direct staff for city council, as you just worded it so nicely.
May I just speak to the
Yeah.
motion? Would that be simply solved by providing the same protection as the other two under section 34? I forget the number.
Right, that's the non-conforming section, and so by adding density as one of the,
A very easy fix, literally.
could
Thank you.
be.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please, Lori.
Can that motion be restated?
No, go ahead.
No, I think we prefer you do it.
To clarify, the motion maker's idea, I believe, is to ask staff to report to city council, make a change recommended by us to the nonconformity protection of 34-1364, whatever that number is, and provide for that protection on density within the zoning district in the same manner they are protecting it for lot width and area.
And I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Again, Member Faison. Are you just there for your vote? Okay. I thought maybe you had a comment, wanted to cover it off. All right, roll call, please, Lori.
Member Troutman,
Yes.
Secretary Faison,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Childs,
Yes.
Member Scully,
Yes.
Member Garad,
Yes?
Chairman Aton.
Yes. All right. Moving on to item 9B, please.
Item 9B, conditional use permit number 9, 2024, Titusville Storage. This item begins on page 67 of 89. The applicant is requesting a CUP to allow a mini warehouse use at a vacant 2.55 acre property located west of South Washington Avenue, US Highway 1, and south of State Road 50, having Brevard County parcel ID number 223526000504.1, currently designated with the Light Industrial Services and Warehousing M1 zoning district. A CUP is required to permit a mini warehouse use in the M1 zoning district according to section 28214 mini warehouse. The conceptual site plan illustrates a 4-story mini warehouse building, associated parking, stormwater facilities, and wetland preservation area. The property is currently vacant and has been designated as industrial on the city's future land use map as early as 1988. The current M1 zoning district was placed on the property with the adoption of the citywide rezoning ordinance number 5, 1993. The property is currently vacant. The property has 438 feet of frontage along US Highway 1, an arterial road, and abuts the Florida East Coast Railroad along the rear. Page 80 is the concept plan. You might have to zoom out to see the full plan, which illustrates one access point off of South Washington Avenue, one building that's 4 stories, several parking spaces, proposed dry retention, and protection of a 5,123 square foot wetland with as narrow as 15-foot wide wetland buffer along the perimeter. And happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Member Grodd.
One simple question for Eddie on the site plan. I'm glad you mentioned 80 of 89. On the northeast corner of the property shows proposed cross-access, which is good planning. Did the city require cross-access in the adjacent property, which I think is the brewery?
That's correct. The property to the north is Bricks Brewery, and non-residential uses along an arterial require that cross-access.
So this will join to one that exists already, so the easements can,
I'm not sure if there's an existing cross-access on that property to the north currently, but if that property to the north, if it doesn't currently have one, if it gets redeveloped in the future, we'll have to provide that as well.
okay. But if you can just look into that if it did back, because that probably before your time, or certainly before my time, but just to see if there may be one there that makes that easy. Thank you.
So I know there's a parking spaces that go, I think, all the way up. I'm looking at the Google Maps right here, but I don't know about roadage, right?
That's why I was asking.
Member Face.
Currently, how many storage units do we have in the city of Titusville or servicing the city of Titusville?
I don't have that number for you.
I just did a quick Google search, and it says there are over 70 self-storage facilities located in or directly serving the Titusville area. 70. That's a lot. Okay, we're going to continue this. So I just want to keep that in people's minds that there are 70 storage units that are serving Titusville currently right now. There was a big switch. I don't know if many people know, but some time ago, a lot of folks were making money doing real estate, and once real estate kind of became a retail market, they went to buying mobile home parks. And once they bought up mobile home parks, they went from mobile home parks to now buying storage units and car washes. And so we see a proliferation of storage units and car washes popping up all over America. And so a quick Google search says that there are already communities in Florida, such as Vero Beach and Cape Coral, that have put a moratorium in to stop the proliferation of storage units. And so we just had a few just recently built in Titusville, and someone to know, as we look at another storage unit, how many do we already have? And is there really a need for the community to have another? And so I don't know, but we'll see.
Member Chapman.
I had some of those same thoughts when I was thinking about this, like how many storage facilities do we have? We already had some just upgraded or new ones, U-Haul, all them ones, right? My main question right now to staff is so the CUP is for the mini warehouse. What about the mini warehouse statement or title defines it to have to be a CUP? What are, like, for us to have to consider the CUP? Educate me a little bit on this of when you go into planning and zoning and you're coming up with the zoning and you're like, okay, well, you know, we'll make it this, but if you want to do these other ones, you got to get a CUP. Now, like, what goes into the naming of these other categories that could be there as long as city council or the city agrees that it's okay? Like, if you could help me educate what a mini warehouse would really put it out, why we need a CUP for a mini warehouse.
Let me ask a clarifying question. Are you asking why was this specific project required to go through a CUP, or why did the city council require the mini warehouse use in general to go through the CUP process?
I assume that the applicant is doing a mini warehouse. They called it a mini warehouse, or they called it a warehouse or
Storage
or
mini
storage
warehouse.
facility?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So at some point, somebody used that word mini warehouse, and then because that verbiage is in our ordinance, you need a CUP for that. Yeah, what specifically is mini warehouses, like, we have to consider
I
this?
guess it's the
So-
business license.
The
So
business?
that's the term that city council has adopted for this use, and they have a definition explaining so that we can verify that what they're proposing meets that definition is this use. And so it meets that definition. They are proposing a mini warehouse use. The CUP, the purpose of a CUP, and I'll share this because I had a call with one of the P&Z members who asked me just in general, what is the purpose of this process? What are we supposed to be reviewing? Council has said that a mini warehouse, when you look in the code for mini warehouse use, you find the name, the definition of what a mini warehouse is, and any substandards. and what zoning districts they're permitted in. And if I'm sure you've all seen, or familiar with our zoning use table, we've got the P, which is permitted by right. If an applicant is proposing use that's permitted by right, they can come in today and get their BTR, their business tax receipt, and start, or building permit to start construction and their site plan and all of that. If it's C, conditional use permit, it means that the use is permitted in that zoning district, but prior to receiving site plan approval, business tax receipt, building permit, they have to go through this public hearing process to see if council wants to adopt any additional conditions, because typically these uses might have some type of nuisance associated with them, whether that's heat, noise, vibration, lighting, some type of factor that the council may want to review this project specifically so that they can add conditions to protect the surrounding properties. And so whenever we're reviewing a conditional use permit, we're reviewing a project to see if there's any other conditions that, because council has said that this use is permitted in this zoning district, but what conditions should we apply, if any, to this specific project at this location? So that's just a basic CUP.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's exactly what I was trying to get out of that. Thank you.
Member Childs.
For a CUP though, can you, according to our ordinances and what a CUP is, can you take into consideration that we have too many, and that's a reason for that we're not going to do a CUP? Because are you saying that's a permitted use, but only if it's if it's something that we still need? Is that permitted in our ordinance to take that into consideration? Maybe that's just a question.
Would having too much be a nuisance?
I was going to say, I'm not an attorney, so I'll let David answer, but
Yeah.
Typically, no, zoning can't be used to say you have too many. In the CUP process, you're saying council has said that this use is permitted in this zoning district, and council has applied this zoning district to this property, so therefore saying this use can be permitted at this property, with the understanding that it must meet any conditions that were outlined in the, listed in the CUP in the conditions, and any additional conditions that council may want to impose. Saying that there are too many is not one of the limiting factors, but maybe if there's anything else David wants to add.
No, that's an apt summary. That would be more of a legislative consideration. That would be council's purview when making the zoning districts. This process is just site-specific, whether the approval of this permit would require any additional conditions, but not consideration of other properties.
Got it. Thank you.
Member Grad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To kind of complement Mr. Fason's observation, and that's kind of like why we're all here. As we just did, you find some things need to be fixed because they're inherently wrong. In the instance of this, however, you make a good point. There is a saturation point. Sometimes you see it with, my mother used to tell me in Titusville had more gas stations. There were gas stations in every corner because everybody wanted a gas station. Gas stations are out of vogue now, super stations are, but many warehouses, I think, have replaced gas stations, so your point's well taken. I would comment on this location for conditional use that we have recently just approved repeatedly brand-new subdivisions, brand-new development orders. We've amended development orders, the Fifth Amendment to a development order. We've slapped 150-foot tall apartments within a mile of this site, and I think that many warehouses, by and large, are located near residential apartment, multifamily, or high-density detached single-family, whereby you don't have enough room to store the stuff from New York when you moved here. And this is coming like the chicken and the egg, I suspect. It's coming because they're coming, and they're coming pretty quick as we keep seeing. So I agree with the observation wholeheartedly. That's what we're here to see and watch trends and make recommendations. In this instance, that location probably is well warranted because of its proximity to.
I agree. I think the governing of units is more of an economic thing as far as overall. If it didn't make sense, they're not going to build it. This is cost significant money to do these kinds of projects. The comprehensive plan and whether middle of downtown Titusville historic district we should put a mini warehouse, whole nother issue. Yeah, I think, like you say, this is a good spot for it.
I have to laugh. Do you remember we saw a presentation here a couple of years ago where they were trying to do a similar idea in front of the warehouse that's on 50 that used to be a Cook's and then later be. What I remember was the representative had a photograph of one of his many warehouses, like in downtown Miami, where it was facade, you couldn't tell it wasn't in the
Right.
historic district.
And frankly, they look, the ones U-Haul, all of the ones recently look very nice, you know? Yeah, yeah, and it probably looks better than an empty, overgrown lot or a dilapidated Kmart, which is what you're talking about. So with that, open the public hearing. Do we have any cards, Lori?
Yes, one card.
You got the call to rush here.
Yes, my name is Krista Runty. I'm here from Lowndes on behalf of the applicant. We agree with staff's report and the findings in the staff report, and we are requesting that a conditional use permit be granted to allow the mini warehouse use. I don't want to bore you with reiterating what he just went over, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Member
Yes.
Faison?
So I'll ask you, so how many storage units are there in Titusville?
I'm not certain, but I heard you guys just say there's 70, so
There's 70.
perhaps 70.
All right, and well, so because you're not the applicant, so I don't know if you know what the market research is on storage units in Titusville, like their fill rate, like how often, what is their fill capacity rate? How many vacant storage units are there? What's the nearest one to you? For example, since he mentioned about 1.5 miles, there is one just around about 2 miles from you right now, 50, which is a brand new one. Right now, U-Haul over on Garden Street is just now expanding, so there's also availability there. And there's other storage units throughout the city. Are you aware of all of these?
I am not, but as mentioned earlier, I don't think the need or saturation is a relevant factor in granting the conditional use permit.
So we here on this panel, right, are looking after the community. And if we see that there's an oversaturation of anything, right, then there wouldn't be a need for a conditional use permit to be granted. We could choose to elect to not approve. Now, of course, we're not the approving body. That goes to the city council, but we can recommend not approval. Would you agree?
You can recommend that, yes. I'm just referencing what the criteria are in the zoning rule that's applicable.
Correct. But I can still recommend not approval, though. Would you agree?
Sure, you can recommend whatever approval you guys decide on.
Yes. So when you say that it's not relevant, I'm just saying that it's my purview to be able to recommend.
Understood.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Does anyone else have questions?
Anyone
for
else
me?
have anything? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other cards, Lori?
No more cards.
I see no other people, so I assume there's no other cards. I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Member Childs?
Yeah, I agree with you, Chairman, about it's a supply and demand issue. And I think if it didn't look right in that place, there would be a reason to say, and that's why the CUP is there, is like, because there's some areas that are zoned this way, you're like, well, it could or could not go in this area. So we're like, let's have them come before us so we can look at it and see if it really does fit. And I think in this case, in that area, I don't see why there would be a problem with the storage, especially like right across from that big, apartment building. That's tons of customers over there because they have, my ex-daughter-in-law lives over there, but they're apartments and they sometimes need extra storage, and that's a nice little quick jaunt across the street there. Well, can you really go across the street? You probably have to do a U-turn or something, but I think it's one of those where it's supply and demand, and I'm fully in support of this. But
So the other thing about our property, right, is that it's right against the railroad tracks, and which is also another high value for future folks that may need real estate along railroad tracks. And so once we allow that to go there, that's no longer there. And so as we look at our property that we have to make sure that we're doing due diligence and great care of what we have, because we don't have very much railroad property. Orlando doesn't have very much of that, There's other communities that don't have this. So that's a very valuable location, not only for that. So if we're going to put storage units, there's plenty of other places in the city that storage units can go. But I also say that we don't need more storage units. This community doesn't need more storage units. And it doesn't need it along railroad tracks. because that right there is another source. I mean, we had somebody before us that was looking for real estate that had access to railroad tracks.
A bleach
Right.
plant.
Huh?
Of the bleach plant.
Yeah, the bleach plant, right? So it's not like that's not valuable for some other use, right? And if we're going to agree with storage units, which is fine, if you guys agree, why does it be right against some railroad tracks where something else can go there?
I don't think you
Member
block
Childs.
somebody just because we don't think it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think you just block somebody because you think someone else might be able to put something there that might need to use the railroad tracks. I think that'd be
But we've done it
unfair
before, though.
as a, huh?
But we've done it before. We've
I don't think
recommended
so.
something not go someplace.
I don't think
because-
so. I think if you had to take the project and say, is it okay if they go, if this use works there, then it should work there. Not, maybe there's some other use that might magically appear someday that might want to use it and we're gonna, approve it for this use. I don't think that's right, yeah.
Okay.
I'd play devil's advocate a little bit on that. If something ever happened to this building, this 4-story building, it's very easy to add a rail spur there, and then this becomes a warehouse of some sorts, in future terms that now they already have a building there that's 4 stories. It plays devil's advocate. It could be that too.
Member Grod.
Just a couple of footnotes to Mr. Fason's concern, and I think all that's valid. I mean, that's what we're all here for. One of the idiosyncrasies of my experience with industrial and manufacturing is that it's good planning process to put it on a railroad right away, especially when the railroad right away is one boundary and a federal highway is the other boundary, or an interstate. There's not a lot of housing and subdivisions that want to squeeze between those two the way they used to do it, like where I live. So that's a good point about protection of that corridor for railroad access, but I'm looking at a 260-foot deep property, and when you have a siding for railroad access, the siding's going to jut into that property boundary, a pretty good proportion of it, to be able to facilitate the siding's width and rail width. That shrinks the property's development potential because 260 feet is probably going to drop below 200 feet. When you start putting all those standards together, those skinny peninsulas of land between roads and railroad right-of-ways are not always uniform in size. Some places it could be coterminous, like Hopkins at the FEC Railroad by the high school. There is no land left. Go south here, it's 260 feet. Go down to where the bleach manufacturer was, and it's probably closer to 1,000 feet where a railroad siding could be. So this may be a good industrial site, but to envision an industrial site that might need railroad right-of-way might not be practical. It could be done, but it'd have to be a different kind of development than you would have maybe for bottle manufacturing that needs to have railroad cars for bottles being manufactured to ship out. That's my, at least, comment on the likelihood of this being something that should be protected for something big, when something like this between the brewery might be a good transition going south. Nobody's really bothered in a mini warehouse by what takes place in a brewery. I can assure you that's a very big rule in communities that regulate breweries because of the odors that emanate from the brewing process. And you have to be careful about exceeding the volume of brew to what makes brew up, the trucks that transport grain. So it's one thing to have Busch Gardens in Anheuser-Busch. It's another to have a microbrewery like the name of it, I forget.
Leyland.
Yes, Bricks. So that's just my follow-up to what you said. I think these are valid points of economic considerations and geometric considerations, and do we have too many? That can be a good consideration.
Member Troutman.
Yeah, just a quick question actually to Eddie. So with this property, I just want to touch base on the environmental part of it just real quick. And I know that when they go through the process of this, does this have the same statute of like 25% tree canopy, any of that stuff, or can they come in and clear cut this and then put native trees and what's in our ordinances now as far as foliage and things like that, or what part of that process on this property? Because I know this property it's very wooded, and I know a lot of it is pine, but I was just curious on what will they have to keep to ordinances when it comes to this kind?
Sure, so that's a few steps down the road. If council is inclined to approve the CUP, the next step will be submitting the site plan and their tree mitigation package and landscaping package. And so I'm just pulling up the canopy requirements, if you give me just a second. So for commercial and industrial development, these fall under section 30-31.5B, which is optional canopy area requirement. So if they elect to opt into the canopy requirement, they can receive reduced tree mitigation required mitigation for the trees that would have to be removed, but they're not required to meet the canopy section.
So they could come in and clean it out and then build their property up and then put in whatever foliage that they build on their plan or whatever?
There are still other sections of the code, like the landscape perimeter, which says,
I guess the question would be, does this come back to us again for that part of the process, or because it's like, that's pretty streamlined because of the Highway 1 corridor and?
that's correct, yeah.
Okay.
So what you're talking about is more of the engineering side of things, the site plan approval. What's being presented tonight as the CUP is
Sure.
this is the only time unless, the only time it'll go back to a public hearing is if it needs a variance, a BAA meeting. That would not come before you. Other than that, I can't think of what else would bring it back before the PMZ
Okay.
for a land use change or rezoning. They wouldn't need to do any of those.
All right, I just want to at least touch base on the environmental side of it and see where we're at on that too with it, so, thanks.
Member Childs.
I make a motion to recommend approval of conditional use permit 9-2024 Titusville Storage as presented.
Can I have a second?
I'd make a second, Mr. Chairman, if I may make a note to the concern. The site plan shows in the southeast corner or the bottom right of the page 80 of 89. That's a pretty large area if you look at the existing wetlands, which is not going to be cleared, and you look at the buffer, which I don't think the code lets you clear the buffer. The southeast corner is going to remain wooded. To what extent those woods are there now?
Okay, I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know if they could agitate that area at all or not, or, you know.
Anything's possible, but my seconds, because, and you're concerned, I agree with, I think they're going to be leaving the southeast corner
Okay.
as is because of environmental rules.
Sure. And I think that'll make some citizens happy there.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion before we call a vote? Roll call, please, Lori.
Secretary Faison,
No.
Member Garad,
Yes?
Member Troutman,
Yes.
Member Scully,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Childs,
Yes.
Chairman Aton.
Yes.
Member Faison, could you state your basis?
Yes. So our community right now is growing at an alarmingly rate, and there needs to be a moratorium or some kind of stop, pause to reevaluate what we're allowing in this city. When we already have, say, 70 storage units that are accessible to the city, do we really need more? So we need to look at that.
President Aton, is that something that we can, I guess another thing that we could ask staff on to look at is if this is becoming a big trend that, to Mr. Faison's?
So like I said, so this trend isn't just for the city of Titusville, it's across the nation. As I said, Cape Coral and the other communities, Vero Beach, that have gone ahead and put a moratorium in, because this is becoming proliferation. These are low-use these are low-use buildings. They provide a low tax base to communities, and sometimes they can create blight. So do we really want to continue to allow just anything to be built in this community? I'm not saying to no to any storage units. What I'm saying is, let's put a pause on some of these buildings and look and see, is it something that we need in this community? Car washes is another one. Do we need any more car washes in this community? Do we? I don't know.
So I agree with you totally, like that we definitely need to look into these things and see, where our trend is going but is that how, do we direct staff and ask city council to do a study on that and see that would give information back to them to move down the right path to Mr. Fason's concerns and things of that nature? Or how do we get to this point to find out what's saturated or not?
Sure. So the process would be, as the recommending body to city council, is you would make a recommendation that council direct staff to research that issue, whether it's car washes, self-storage facilities, or both, or additional uses. If council decides that that's an issue they want to direct staff to study, they will make that motion at their city council meeting, and then staff will provide a report to council. And then council will provide further direction on whether to make a moratorium or additional action.
And again, I don't make the recommendation again if this board, if my fellow commissioners actually see that there's an issue. If my fellow commissioners do not agree that it's an issue, then I wouldn't do it. But me personally, I think we need to present this to the council to look at what we're allowing in this community when it comes to car washes and storage units, for example.
One additional caveat is to consider the Senate Bill 180 and what the legislature adopted is we're not currently allowed to adopt anything more restrictive. So at this time, we're not permitted to adopt moratoriums. But the moment that we are allowed to adopt a moratorium, then council could provide that direction. So this would be to start the study to see whether that is an issue that council wants to address when the time is right, when that becomes an available option.
And I was going to be clear again, you said that, and again, the communities cannot allow anything more restrictive. So it's a green light go for everything.
What's that?
Did you just say that the state passed some kind of legislation that permits communities from being restrictive? Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, sir, because we were impacted by the hurricanes. That's what the intent is, that communities cannot adopt new regulations that are more restrictive.
Subject to amendment perhaps in this legislative
Potentially,
session.
yes.
It's brewing again.
So I'm flabbergasted again. So it's a green light go for, so that's why I said, is it a green light go for just about anything in this community because of the hurricanes, because of this legislation?
I'm not sure what you mean by green light go.
I mean, people can just come up and just say, hey, I want to build this now, and we can't.
Correct. Those uses are currently permitted in the code, and a new moratorium stopping those uses could not be adopted. That's correct.
Thank you.
Member Grodd.
Just a footnote, and two things that are trending, since you were mentioning trending, to expand that comment, that the trend in ownership of property and homesteads versus apartment dwellers can probably be expressed best by the now move to regulate at a federal level national corporations who build subdivisions of detached housing for the principal purpose to rent, not to buy or sell, to rent, because people like the atmosphere of a detached house as opposed to the colony living in a 150-foot building overlooking the Space Center. To that extent, you would have to ask the staff, I think, to conduct the survey of what's the occupancy rate of the 70 mini warehouses. If, for example, staff reported the occupancy rate of all mini warehouses in Titusville was 100%, then certainly the question begs, I must need more because you're approving apartments. Correct. And the reason we're getting more mini warehouses is that some of these home sites that are getting built on 50-foot, 40-foot lots, I mean, where you put your Fibber McGee's attic, and everybody has one, and the answer is many warehouses. I mean, that's just, these things, that's why I said I find it myself humorous when many warehouses first emerged. I mean, they were like shacks. They were metal buildings. They were just horrible. Now they've evolved. At least they got some facade and some decoration to make them look nice. But your point's well taken. The question really is, what's the saturation point But before that, what's the occupancy rate?
Yeah, so when the one that was built over on Garden Street, when that gentleman came up, and I didn't ask what it cost to build, but he told me that he recouped his cost in 3 years, and they have 80% occupancy rate. And with 80% occupancy rate, he recouped, and it cost millions of dollars to build these. He recouped his money within 3 years. So I understand that they're profitable. I do. I understand that they're a great investment. I completely do. But at the same time, and I'm not anti-growth, but I am very, very pro Titusville. Okay, very, very pro Titusville. So when the guy built the one on Garden Street, again, can you imagine? I think that like theirs may cost $10 million. I think her building made four stories on that property, maybe 10, maybe a little bit $12 million, and they'll recoup that back in 3 years with 80% occupancy rate. Not 100% occupancy rate, 80% occupancy rate. That is insane. Okay, but it's a great investment, and so I'm not that. I get the numbers. I 100% do, but I also get my community.
Does anyone care to make a motion to recommend to council something that we can't do as per Eddie's?
Yeah, I mean, we can't do it. I'm
Okay.
not gonna.
That being said, we have no public. I think you're past, so thank you. Yeah. So let's see, reports, city staff.
Just the March 7th, if you signed up for the community workshop this Saturday, we'll see you there.
City attorney?
No report.
I have nothing to report. Any of the members? Member Garage?
I have one thing to ask. I asked this back a few months ago. I didn't see anything, or at least an answer in response. For me, the way the staff orchestrates and paginates the reports is very extensive and very illustrative and very informative. The difficulty I have, and I'm familiar with that by what I did, is that you don't see the location unless you're inherently familiar with it because you're a longtime Titusville resident, and I am, and I can see these spots in my mind's eye. When I can't, which I do find I can't do always, I find myself scrolling through 47 pages to find out where that address is, or cheating and using my phone. That leads me with the question, what good's the report do if I have to use my phone to find it? So what I asked several months ago was, could staff consider at least following the introduction page? The next thing you see is where it's at.
Yeah.
All the other sundry stuff with flora and fauna and environmental reports and 47 ways to build something, that's useful, but to know where it
9A
is-
drove that home for me. Is same thing crossed my mind. Is it would be.
So
as-
if that
yeah.
would be possible, it'd be helpful to me, maybe other members, if you agree.
Yeah, just a satellite photo with a red box around it that says subject property
So
would be.
there's a satellite photo with a red box surrounded on page 25. Can I ask if maybe it would help if it was more zoomed out? Is
Or
that
just duplicate it up at the top, I think is the
duplicated
thing.
in the staff report?
And yeah,
Just under the
somewhere
staff
up
report, I
in
think.
kind
Like
of
right-
in the intro section,
Yeah,
basically.
wherever your beginning starts, I have to go back and I'll show you my thought. Maybe it'll help other members.
Or maybe just move the maps before the staff report? Would
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
I think it's just the one image
Yeah,
that we
it's
need
just
to
the
move.
one
We don't
thing.
need to move all of them.
Because the
though.
confusing part is the other maps did not show the subject property in relationship to the Indian River City
Yeah,
maps.
so just a-
You knew where it was because you referenced it, but unless you find the other map to find out where it is, and then in your mind's eye, look at that in reference to that, that made it even worse, but.
Just as an example, you open up the first page after, forget the minutes. So the meat and potatoes here is rezoning request 80/2025. The thing starts off with applicant's request, recommendation, background.
Which page are you on?
This will be page 12 of 89. So you start by, what are we going to see? We're going to see a rezoning. We're going to see what the applicant's request, the staff's recommendation, the background, and then the next thing you see is property information. What I'm submitting is, what if you put the map after that, and then the property information, you would have the data that would be illustrative to the photograph of where it's at, so you kind of start getting spatial with yourself.
So-
So we don't do what the poor guy did tonight when I opened my mouth about, and I was thinking, I said that to myself as I talked. I said, I don't want to advertise, so what I want to do is call it that place on Hopkins near something that looks like that. And I cheated and said the name.
It's fine. Well,
He
they
just happened
didn't
to be
even.
here.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's illustrated by the citizens that spoke against it, that they didn't even know what property it was. So,
Okay. I understand.
yeah.
Just, to me, the picture's worth 1,000 words. From that, I started reading the data, and I can see the picture of the trees, and I can understand the comment about protection of trees. Like following your suit, just
Yeah.
food for thought.
But yeah, I think to your point, Eddie, if we're using the one of 25 is zoomed out just a little bit more with the red box, don't have to say subject property. We kind of know what it is if you don't want to say it, and have that somewhere in those first couple pages. I think it's the fact that we start on page 12 and this is on page 25 is kind of illustrates our.
Okay.
I would,
Careful.
yeah, I would suggest like line 15 right after property information. If you, yeah, maybe did the image and then start your property information. That'd probably
I
be.
apologize that that wasn't addressed previously when you brought it up.
Yeah, this particular one really drove it home. So, but I had that thought while we were going through all that. Yeah. All right. I think we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Before you gavel, I did need to announce I will not be present at the next meeting, the third Wednesday of this month. I won't be present. And
Okay.
I'll let you know in an email. Thank you.